Welcome back, and today we're going to talk about a discovery that was unleashed earlier. The Ministry of Antiquities announced that the Egyptian mission was doing excavations in Dahshur, have discovered remnants of a pyramid in Dahshur that belongs to the 13th dynasty, belongs to one of the kings. He used to live in the 13th dynasty. There were lots of stories about the remnants of this pyramid. It's a very important discovery that is going to be tailed by other discoveries might be coming up following that particular one. And on that particular important event, we're very delighted to have with us and joined here live in the studio by Dr. Samir Abbass, Egyptologist and historian and researcher. Good morning, Dr. Abbass.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Abbass. And of course, it looks like a very interesting discovery, a new discovery that was in Dahshur, the remnants of an old pyramid. Would you please shed light on this discovery?
Sure, so first of all, Dahshur still have lots of hidden treasures not being discovered yet. Dahshur as a site is not well excavated, and there is reasons behind that. The Dahshur site is famous for being a military base, and there is an oil field there as well, and that's why the area has been closed officially for visits, excavations until 1996. And because of that, it is unlike Giza, unlike Saqqara, it was so easy to excavate there, and there is lots of excavation projects launched in Saqqara and Giza. Dahshur is still a virgin site, not well touched. Even when you go today, hardly you can find anybody there. Regardless, even with the great importance of Dahshur, which is having one of the most important pyramids in Egyptian history, the Bent Pyramid, which has helped us clearly to help us greatly to understand and to prove many of the theories of the pyramids buildings. So the new discovery dates back to the 13th dynasty. And 13th dynasty is a very interesting historical period in Egyptian history. Egypt history classified into different periods: Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, and New Kingdom. And in between of every period, there was an era known as intermediate period. The first intermediate period, that's when the Old Kingdom collapsed and the country divided into different states, controlled by local rulers. And that's why it is very important to understand the historical background of this particular period, the 13th dynasty, before to understand about the pyramids and to have more understanding and more clear view of the pyramids and its history. So the 13th dynasty lies as a second intermediate period when Egypt controlled by foreign nations, and which is the Egyptians call them the Hyksos. So the Middle Kingdom is 11th and 12th dynasty, which is that was a kind of Renaissance period. And then Egypt has been invaded by foreign tribes. The Egyptians call them the Hyksos, and they have a control of the north part of Egypt, while the southern part was still under Egyptian control. So to find a pyramid in the 13th dynasty, built according to the Egyptian traditions, and where the invaders were in control, it's really amazing. And the same, their capital, by the way, is called Awaris, in the northeast of Cairo, Delta, and east of Delta today, and near Sharqiya. And in their capital, I have the chance to attend and to meet some of the archaeologists there myself. And there was a big surprise that there was an ancient Egyptian religion in practice there, and there was an ancient Egyptian art was in practice there. There was even the invaders, the kings who invaded Egypt, they wrote down their names in hieroglyphics, and which is proving that they were trying to get Egyptianized, proving that they were trying to convince the Egyptians in that time that they are native Egyptian kings. So it's still very early to know the exact history behind this pyramid, So and as I mentioned, because of this particular period, has still lots of questions not being answered. But talking Dahshur, back to Dahshur in particular, my personal assumption that there is still many treasures hidden treasures not being discovered yet.
We have
So the
the,
first illustration showing a map, there is a map of the area of Dahshur, and Dahshur today is famous for the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid, but actually there is at least 6 pyramids. That's before the new discovery in Dahshur. There is 6 pyramids in Dahshur. And the famous pyramids there, the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid, believed to be built by Senefru. So we are talking about a pyramid, for example. So that's that's the that's what discovered from the pyramid, the newly discovered pyramid in Dahshur. And when we talk about newly discovered pyramid, there is hardly anything from the superstructure. Is underground structure. It does make sense because in the Middle Kingdom, in the Second Intermediate period, if there is a pyramid being built, it was built in a smaller scale, not in a big scale. And sometimes they used to build pyramids out of mud bricks in the Middle Kingdom as well, to save time and money as well, which is make it easier to be recycled again. So what is found is a foundation of a pyramid, is underground corridors of a pyramid, and is still under excavation and under study. There is also the illustration, if we can jump into the illustration number 6, which is also showing there is a limestone blocks as a beautiful floor and with an access to an underground gallery. So there is hieroglyphics has been found, but it's still early to decide exactly which king, based on the readings and the new readings of this text, and comparing that with the other historical texts we have.
Right, but what other inscriptions are written? You said that there are lots of plates or cartouche on it. I don't know what you call it. Later on, with the discoveries and the cavities that might be open, and the corridors that could be opened up by the excavation team, new realities could be unveiled. But right now, could be any inscription. Are there any inscriptions that could detect stories of kings and queens buried together or something? Usually by pyramids, they relate stories of kings and queens who are buried inside them.
First of all, there is a misconception about kings and queens buried together. There is a misunderstanding about that as well. So the pyramids in ancient Egypt is mainly built for kings.
Only kings?
For kings. Sorry to say that, but
where do they bury the queens?
I'm talking about mainly. There is an exception for that, but the misconception came from the names of one of the chambers given to one of the chambers inside the Great Pyramid. There is 3 chambers inside the Great Pyramid. There is one of them called the King Burial Chamber, a smaller one called the Queen Burial Chamber, and then underground one called the Unfinished Chamber. That was names given by early archaeologists coming from a Western backgrounds, still not very familiar with the ancient Egyptian religion and the exact symbols of the pyramids. And there is no hieroglyphics proving that there was queens buried inside the pyramid. They make that as an assumption. And that's how the misconception started, and that's how it became known as the Queen Chamber. Even the small pyramids next to the big pyramid, and there is a small pyramid next to the big pyramid in Dahshur, by the way, the area we are talking about, lies exactly in the south side of the Bent Pyramid. Also wrongly or called the Queen Pyramid, but the new readings or the recent theories calling that satellite pyramid, like the small pyramids in Giza. That might open like a big subject of the definition of king and queen in ancient Egypt, and why the pyramids are associated only with the kings, not with the queens in ancient Egypt. Briefly. So that is the design of the Bent Pyramid. One of the greatest wonders of Egypt, one of the hidden treasures of Egypt. It is so called the bent because they have to change the angle from 54 degrees into 43 degrees halfway. And there is lots of theories about that. One of the theories that they were worried of future collapse. That these pyramids is built nearly 4,600 years ago. The ambitious king, his name is Senefru, and he aimed to build this pyramid as high as 160-meter height. 160-meter height, that will make it very close from the Great Pyramid. But they have to change the angle, which is ended with 111 meters height, as far as I remember today. So the importance of that pyramid, the bent pyramid, is it's a very important link between building the step pyramid and the evolution happens to the true pyramid. It is also important because it is the only pyramid which has the most preserved casing layer.
The most preserved?
Casing layer.
Right, but when we talk about discovering remnants of a pyramid, do we mean by that it's buried inside, all inside under, I mean, like a few meters below the ground, or?
Only the underground structure. You know, if this pyramid was a big pyramid, it will not be covered.
But so, how small could it be? I mean,
so it could be as small as, if you have been to Saqqara, for example, there is a pyramid of tea. It could be a pyramid of nearly 40-50 meters height. And built, especially in that period, they didn't build the pyramid totally from a stone from inside outside. They built that from a filling material. They have an outside like wall, and they put rubbles and sand inside, and we call that a budget cut pyramid, which is a really funny name for this pyramid. And they were doing that to save cost, which is mean that by erosions, by rain, it was also existing in ancient Egypt, by recycling the casing layer, hardly anything will be left, because what is left inside the heart of the pyramid and superstructure can be easily withered away by seasonal rain or by sandstorm.
Right, but these pyramids back at that time, the size of the pyramid would detect the luxury of the deceased.
Definitely.
I mean, luxury of the king.
Definitely.
The smaller the pyramid, the poorer the king, or the poorer the person.
Definitely.
And did ordinary people, I mean, ordinary people not from, I mean, not in the royalty or the people from the government, I mean, ordinary citizens used to bury themselves in build pyramids for their burial also?
So, can you please rephrase?
I mean,
what you
if I was
said?
an ordinary citizen, would I be allowed to build myself a tomb?
Like so only for kings and queens.
If that happens as an exceptions, and we have an exception for that in the workmen village in the west side of Luxor, in the west bank of Luxor. We have the chief of the artists who fashioned the tombs in the valley. They built themselves beautiful tombs and decorated with a small pyramid on the top.
A small one.
That was an exception. That was.
They were not allowed.
It wasn't. So and by the way, they did that when the Egyptians kings stopped building pyramids. They stopped building pyramids by the new kingdom. So it should be a small pyramid. From my personal assumption, even before the excavation actually going on or finished, it should be a smaller pyramid, because, as you mentioned, is the pyramid's size can tell you how rich the country was, how rich the king was.
How rich the whole area was.
Exactly, and because that's a big project and needs lots of money to be finished. But in that particular period, that was a country divided into different states. That means that there was no centralized governments collecting the taxation from the whole different states, which is make it difficult for having lots of funds for building a big pyramid. So when we see a big pyramid, what comes to our mind, a very powerful king and ruled for a long period of time.
Now, how can we make use of such very interesting discoveries in Egypt made during the ancient Egyptian times in promoting tourism? We have a lot of discoveries announced recently. I mean, how can we make use of this?
The good thing about this new discovery, promotions and marketing and not only handling that in the local media, which is really great, for saying and talking about this new discovery now, but also attracting world media.
Yes, this is what I mean. I mean,
yes.
Internationally.
Exactly. That will be like a free propaganda.
How can we do this?
So by inviting foreign journalists, by inviting big channels, and many of these big channels, which is they are dying for a genuine new discovery information, and that's as early as King Tutankhamun discovery, by the way. So that was one of the reasons why King Tutankhamun tomb is famous until today, because it was handled well from a propaganda and from a media point of view.
I believe there is another picture that shows.
The inside,
details from the inside. It's magnificent.
So that's, yes, that is the inside of the Red Pyramid, because there is another pyramid in Dahshur called as the Red Pyramid. And it was designed, the great advantage or the great problem in engineering these pyramids is you have a huge weight of a stone, sometimes estimated to 4 million tons of stone, and you have rooms on the ground level and 4 million tons.
But why so many rooms, since They're going to only bury the person in only one room with his belongings or two
I like
rooms.
this. So there is different theory about that, and that's better to be explained from ancient Egyptian religious perspective. The ancient Egyptians believed in there is at least 3 elements of the human body. Ka, they called Ka, Ba, and Ghet. Other words, soul, spirit, and body. 3 rooms for the 3 elements of the body. So we have only one king.
So usually there were 3 rooms?
Yeah, you know, so every pyramid vary, you know, pyramids vary in design from inside. But when we see a 3 rooms, that is could be an indication not only for one, it's indication for one king, but for 3 elements of his body. That's according to the ancient Egyptian religion. I know that it's very upsetting to know that the queen is not buried as pyramids as we imagine, and but that's based on the most recent theories that these 3 rooms dedicated for only for one king. Because the king has 3 elements of his body, which is called Ba, Ka, and Ghet. And
Women didn't?
and so they did as well, you know. But when you look at the pyramids as a symbol, the pyramid is a symbol of resurrection with the sun god. The pyramid is a symbol for the king because the king is not only human. From the ancient Egyptian perspective, is divine as well. And the pyramids serve as a giant staircase of the king's soul to ascend up to the heaven to be unified with his father, the sun god. And that's why they start covering the pyramid with a casing layer to represent the straight rays of the sun. Reaching and beaming out to the flat earth. That's according to the ancient Egyptian beliefs. So there is some queens which has had a special treatment, and they have been buried like kings. Those who ruled as kings.
I was going to ask you that question.
Like Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut is buried in the valley of the kings, not in the valley of the queens. So when there is no problem with queens to be treated as king and have the same burial custom as a king, only if she ruled as a king. And that happens for few women in Egypt.
But why in particular, I mean, we Egyptians here in Egypt became very familiar with the news. We wake up one day, I mean, from time to time, every morning to hear that there is a new discovery of a new pyramid in Dahshur. Every time it's Dahshur. What's the story with Dahshur? It's full of so many pyramids.
Thanks for reminding me about that, because in 2011, shortly before the revolution, I wrote down a post on my blog, and the name of this post was the 17 lost pyramids in Egypt. How I came with the story? Simply a new technology, satellite image, owned by a private company. They make a scan of Egypt desert, and using a special technology, special cameras, which is able to take photos underground, they figure out there are 17 lost pyramids still hidden beneath the Egyptian desert. And that was from 2011. 17 lost pyramids in Egypt not being discovered yet. So we are not talking about big pyramids, or could be a big pyramid like the one in Abbass, but completely taken away, completely recycled. And another particular importance of Dahshur, or characteristic importance of Dahshur, is Dahshur, as I mentioned earlier, has been neglected for excavations in the modern time. It used to serve as an army camp and field for a long time, and that was so difficult to excavate until 1996. So because of that, it is not famous. So when I take people and go to Dahshur, even when Saqqara and Giza is packed with tourists, hardly anybody there in Dahshur, and people wonder, so why? So that's open another subject, is what comes after promoting and talking and media and introducing that in the media. So the infrastructure which is needed to help people going to Dahshur. I'm afraid to say that there is no decent toilet there. There is no decent toilets for people.
There is no
decent toilet.
Okay.
There is no clean toilet for people to use there. Which is I need to tell my guests that they have to use the toilet in Saqqara, and even after 30 minutes drive, and then at least 1 hour visit to Dahshur, is very difficult to use the toilet. Not only. When you go inside the Red Pyramid in Dahshur, which is amazing, the picture of the corbel wall system, which is incredible engineering, that is inside the Red Pyramid. When you go there inside, I'm talking about the infrastructure, how we can work to get that better. It is not that clean. there is dust everywhere, and even the smell is not that good, because there used to be bats nesting inside, but the bats no longer exist, and there is no ventilation machines exist. So you can you can consider like a call of really caring about this area in Dahshur. So add to that Dahshur as an area, and still completely buried. There's still not just one pyramid to be discovered, there's many other tombs could be discovered as well.
Right, Dr. Samir Abbass, we're running out of time. Researcher and Egyptologist, many thanks for joining us today.
And there's one last thing I would like to say. There is a high possibility of finding sun boats in Dahshur, even bigger than the sun boat which is found in Giza. And you can remember that when we come and talk about that again, because Senefru, who built the 2 pyramids there, he was a great fan of boat buildings, and definitely he kept some of his boats there.
So we consider that a promise. The next time you come over, there might be news that there is a new discovery for some boats. Thank you very much for coming over. May you have a very good day. And we're going to go to a short break, and we'll come back to you, so stay with us.